When we're young, we have an amazing, positive outlook about how great life is going to be, but somewhere along the line, we forget to dream and end up settling. Join Up Dots features amazing people who refuse to give up and chose to go after their dreams. This is your blueprint for greatness. So here's your host, live from the back of his garden in the UK, David Ralph.
Yes, hello there. Good morning, everybody across the world. Good morning to another episode of Join Up Dots. And this is one of those shows that's kind of joining up the dots of the show, because back on episode 88, we had a guest who's become a big friend of the show called Cathy O'Dowd, first lady to go up both sides of Everest, I seem to remember. And through following her intently, I discovered this guy, and I saw his story, and I thought to myself, he's somebody that we've got to get on Join Up Dots. He's got a journey and a half, and not only has he got a journey and a half, he's still on it today, and he is quite simply a man with an amazing story of taking life by the scruff of the neck and turning full circle to where he wanted to be. As he says, after failing to get much of an education, I set up an online business selling books, and this fueled my passion for all things literary, but the business failed. In order to pay the mortgage, I started working stacking supermarket shelves at night, and during the day I made a career plan to turn things around. Now, in late 2004, I joined the still relatively young online gambling industry, working in a call centre. 5 years later, I co-founded a company which I subsequently sold and went on to manage operations in the UK, Central and Eastern Europe. And from 2013 to 2016, I was CEO of SKS 365 Group. I'm now a full-time consultant, investor and advisor in one or two startups. And more importantly, I'm embarking on a career as a writer, writing about mountains and the outdoors. In other words, I'm following my passion. And this is what makes him the perfect guest for a show like Join Up Dots, as in late 2016, he quit the rat race to redesign his life in a way that was more satisfying, interesting and adventurous, both to his personal and professional life. He didn't know how to accomplish the large and vague objective of living better, although he knew it meant being more entrepreneurial and spending more time outdoors. So he embarked on a career writing about mountains, adventure and his journey of redesigning his life. And through his website, The Armchair Mountaineer, he's showing all of us how to take control of our lives. So is it as simple as making a firm decision to do something, even if you haven't got all the dots lined up and doing it? Or did he plan everything out so he could make this the life that he's always wanted and is so inspiring to the rest of us? Well, let's find out as we bring onto the show to start joining up dots with the one and only Mr. Thomas Smallwood. Good morning, Tom. How are you, sir?
Good morning, David. Very good, thank you.
It is lovely to have an Englishman on. I didn't realise how much I miss English people. When I'm surrounded by them, I try to keep away from them. But in podcasting land, it hits me. It hits me. It goes deep into my heart that I've got a connection with you, sir.
It's good. Well, it's good to know. I think we all have a feeling about our own fellow countrymen and women. It's always a double-edged sword, isn't it? When we're not there, we miss them. When we're amongst them, we want to run away.
It is strange, but you can run away anyway. And one of the things that I love, and I'm going to get straight to the chase, was when I connected with you, you said, "Oh, when do you want to do the interview?" Because I'm quite free with my time, and I thought there's not many people that can say that. There's not many people that can just say, "Yeah, when do you want to do it?" Does that still excite you that you could actually be sitting on the sofa watching Netflix in your underpants at the moment?
It does. I'm not, just to be clear, because I'm fully focused on you. But it does, yeah. But that also in itself is a double-edged sword. But there is a certain amount of freedom that you get from working in that way, which is attractive. It does, of course, require an enormous amount of discipline, which is imposed on you when you work in an office environment. So it has its challenges, but yeah, sure. I mean, the upside is obviously bigger, or I wouldn't be doing it.
Yesterday, I woke up and I basically work all the time because I love it. And my wife's been saying to me, "You need a break. You've just been working all the time." I go, "Well, it's not work. It's not work. It's like a kind of a hobby, fun, passion thing. If I wasn't doing this, I'd be doing it anyway. So I might as well do it. Just let me do it, wife." And I've been watching that BBC programme. And this goes across the world because you can find it on Netflix. But if you haven't watched Line of Duty, you're missing something. And so I was watching Line of Duty, and the night before, I got to 3/4 of the way through an episode and I started dropping off. So I thought, I'll finish it tomorrow morning. So while everyone was whizzing off to work, commuting, I got the kids off to school and I thought, I'll just finish off the last half hour of Line of Duty. 10 hours later, I was still sitting in the same spot. I hadn't got up for the entire day. I was just in Netflix heaven, allowing my body to rest. And I still can't get over that. I can't get over that. Even though I've put all the effort into getting to that point, it seems to me that the simple things in life are becoming more important to me, more than the financial aspect. And I think you would be somebody that would say the same.
Yeah, unquestionably. I mean, unquestionably so. Yeah, I think what I've kind of done. I mean, there've been a few times in my life when I've sort of reinvented myself. That's maybe a bit of a grand way of saying it, but the most recent one, which is so last year, I sort of assessed my life and again, I make it sound like some sort of clear, cold decision, but it wasn't quite like that. And I sort of, but I reached the point when I wanted to make some changes. I wasn't happy with the format of the working life and the working environment that I was in. And so I sort of eventually got to the point where I said to myself, well, hang on a minute, what is it you actually want to do? What is it you enjoy? And I was in a position to be able to sort of do that, in a financial position to say, listen, I'm giving myself 2017 to change the way I live my life and to go on this journey.
Thomas, what happened if it didn't work out? 2000, would you then go back to working for somebody, or because once you get that kind of enjoyment, you can't go back.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. You're making it sound as if I had a great plan there. What happens? I don't know, David. Honestly, I haven't thought that far ahead. I just said I'm going to give myself the time to make it work. And then if it doesn't work, needs must. So when humans get to a point, they make a decision to do something else. So, yeah, I suppose in the back of my mind, there is that concern that if I don't find all the alternative streams of income from various projects and that I want to this year, then there's going to have to be some sort of conversation at the end of 2017, again, an internal conversation with myself, where I make that decision. Do I keep plowing ahead on this, or do I go back to try and get back into the world of, let's say, the 9 to 5, which invariably becomes the 7 to 7. But that's a conversation which will have to happen, or may have to happen. I hope it doesn't, but it is a possibility.
It won't happen, Thomas, because I tell you what, because you won't go back.
I'm quite confident it won't, because I'm not thinking too much about it.
Yeah, but you couldn't go back. There's no way on earth now at 9 o'clock in the morning sitting at a desk, you get your work done by 10 and you've got to sit there till 5. You just couldn't do it. You'd last about 6 weeks and then you'd have to quit. I think once you burn those bridges, you have the time freedom. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, because it is one of those things that is so vitally important for people to understand that there are different ways of operating. We don't actually have to go to the desk. Now, there's some people that love going to a desk and just doing the work and then coming home, which is great. But I think there is a big movement now of people that wanting their cake and eat it. And once you've been chomping on that cake, you just want more cake, I think. I think you and me, we're in a position now that it's all or nothing.
Yes, I think you're probably right. And I think you're right also when you say that there are more people wanting this. And I think it's worth pointing out that I think companies and organizations are going to have to gear up for this and the expectations of their employees increasingly, to actually probably build some of that flexibility into the regular, let's say, working environment.
Because I actually was given this, it's one of the reasons I've ended up where I am now. I was given a certain amount of flexibility, but when I actually had that taken away from me, I had a manager who said, yeah, you can work where you want, you can do what you want, everything's great. And then a new manager came in and said, no, I want you at your desk at 9 o'clock. And I just went, I'm not having this, screw this, I'm just going to sort of do my own thing. And it just meant that you couldn't go back. But the problem was, you get that feeling, but how do you transition from there to paying the bills? That is the first step, isn't it? And we're going to talk about that now, because I think there's 3 stages to your journey. Number 1, there's the confidence bit of actually doing it. Then I think there's the bit about paying the bills and just, earning enough to keep the lights on. And then there's the dream life. And I think so many people think that they can transition really to the dream life straight away. Yeah,
that certainly isn't the case. And in order to kind of sort of answer these points, I'll wind back a bit if I can, and if I, as I mentioned before, I've gone through a couple of stages in my life before where I've sort of had to sort of reinvent myself, or at least sit down and say, how do you want to live the rest of your life? And the first one was when I dropped out of university with no qualifications. The second time was, as you alluded to, or as you mentioned in the kind of preamble there, was when I found myself aged 29 stacking supermarket shelves, and then most recently now. And each time, it's been a really difficult process to actually make that change. So this relates to what you were just talking about now, building up the confidence to make these changes. It is not something that is, at least for me, innate and easy to do. All these kind of major decisions come at, let's say, the 11th hour, just before breaking point. Just to be clear, I'm not some superhuman who's really, got everything sorted and everything planned. But I do obviously have the ability to make these changes when it's time. And I'm not entirely sure where that comes from, because I've always battled with self-confidence issues all my life, and I continue to do so now. So I think the confidence to make these kind of life-changing decisions is something which I don't know whether you can learn it. It comes from circumstance, I think. At least in my case, I can say it comes from circumstance. It comes from the point where you reach a point where you just think, well, I'm really not happy. I need to change something. And then it happens. In all honesty, it probably should happen a bit before. And I think about my own decision now to kind of quit the rat race and change the way I live. I should have done it 6 months before I did, because I left a job that I wasn't, particularly kind of happy in. And what I should have done is change things then, but I didn't. I dived straight into another job thinking, oh, this will sort me out. And of course, it absolutely didn't. So yes, the confidence to do this is a big thing, but it's not something that you should sort of think, oh, I don't have the confidence to do that, therefore I can't do it, because I'm that person as well. The confidence comes from a number of things. And one of them, I'm sorry to say, is getting close to breaking point.
I agree with you. I agree with you totally. And I didn't want to jump in there because, it's difficult. Doing a show like Join Up Dots, it's going to sound very positive, very motivational, because nobody wants to listen to a miserable host going, oh, I've had a really terrible day today. And funnily enough, I've mentioned this a few times, but back on like episode 300 or something, I was having a really bad time of it. And I was close at breaking point, and I recorded an episode basically saying to the world, guys, it's going crap, and threw it out. And the feedback that I got from people, it was amazing. It was like a tsunami of people wanting realism and not having, everything's great, everything's brilliant, the kind of Facebook highlights that we talk about. But the breaking point, I do think there is gold in every breaking point, because when I look back and I join up the dots, I can see that I wouldn't have got to the good stuff without those breaking points. I would have got a kind of diluted version of what I'm achieving and receiving now. Does that make sense to you?
No, unquestionably, because when I kind of just sort of thinking about coming and speaking to you, I started to look back, and it's not something I've done in this sort of detail. And of course, you do start to join up the dots, and I've seen a sort of a pattern, and so unquestionably so, yeah.
Now, you've got this idea of transitioning and reinventing your life, and a lot of people would go, well, it's not easy. I've got a mortgage, I've got a daughter, I've got a wife. You can't do it at my age. Now, you've done it, but did you have the big, deep conversation with your wife? Did she understand why you wanted to do it? Would she have preferred you to go out and be the 9 to 5, the 7 to 7 husband?
That is a very good question. Yes, of course, I had the conversation with my wife. Would she have preferred? I mean, I think, what she wants is for me to be happy and us as a family unit to be happy and healthy. So she has been very understanding of it. And in this particular incarnation, let's say, of my reinvention, I've got myself into a financial position where I was able to do this and say, listen, 2017 is a year where the mortgage is covered for that year. So, we can go ahead and I can try and make these changes. It is obviously a consideration. The going back to the first kind of time when I was 29, and I found myself business having failed and everything sort of not really going very well, and I was working nights stacking shelves in a supermarket, and then during the day I was still trying to tie up the loose ends of the business that was failing. That in a sense was much harder because financially I couldn't make ends meet. I couldn't pay the mortgage. But again, it comes to the point where at some point you have to take that plunge. So, I mean, going one way is essentially heading for a complete dead end. So you have to try something else. Now, the reason I kept stacking shelves in a supermarket was not because I enjoyed it. It was just because I had to pay the mortgage. So people, I think, and I surprised myself, but I think everyone would surprise themselves at how much you're willing to put up with in order to sort of do what you have to do to make your life go on, if in a sense to change the direction of your life. So I started looking for things that I would enjoy doing, and that's the one thing I've been able to do sort of consistently when I've needed to, is to sit down and have a moment of clarity and say, what do you actually like and what skills do you have?
Well, let's play some words now, and then we're going to delve into the transition and what you're actually doing. So here's Jim Carrey.
My father could have been a great comedian, but he didn't believe that was possible for him. And so he made a conservative choice. Instead, he got a safe job as an accountant. And when I was 12 years old, he was let go from that safe job. And our family had to do whatever we could to survive. I learned many great lessons from my father, not the least of which was that you can fail at what you don't want. So you might as well take a chance on doing what you love.
Now that plays perfectly to yourself. So you sat down and thought, what do I actually want to do? What do I enjoy? Now you came up with an answer which is obviously right for you. But when I first looked at it, I thought, really? How does this work? You write about mountains, and that was a stretch of my imagination of how you can convert that into a monetizable business. How did you do it?
Right. Well, how I got to it, firstly, is by sitting myself down really and saying, what did you enjoy doing when you were young and had no money? First question. Right. Because if it's something I really enjoyed doing when I had no money, then surely that's something immediately puts me in a comfortable position. I can get happiness from doing something that doesn't involve, I don't know, flying helicopters or anything like that. When I was younger, I used to climb and I used to spend a lot of time in the mountains, and I really, really enjoyed being outdoors. And I sort of neglected that over the last sort of 10 or 15 years as work and a professional life took over. So that was a decision. I said, you know what, I want to get back to that. I want to spend more time doing that. Secondly, I've always enjoyed, or for a long time enjoyed writing and literature. And it's something, again, which over the 10 to 15 sort of years I've neglected. So I said, well, I'm going to sit down and start writing a blog. And that evolved into the site. I didn't have a clear plan saying I'm going to set up a site that in 2 years is going to be a big resource for people who enjoy, mountains and getting outdoors. It didn't start like that. That's how I came to the actual website. And I didn't even think of monetizing it at the beginning. I literally just thought I'm going to do something I enjoy.
So one of the things that I looked at, Tom, and I thought, yeah, this is spot on, and it's really sort of honest as well, was on your blog somewhere, you was talking about how many times you had to change your social media kind of blurb, where you've been redesigning yourself, and each time you've looked at it and thought, it's not quite right to what I'm doing now. It's not really saying what I'm all about. Did that surprise you? Did you think that you was just going to sort of get the thing out there and it was going to be as it is, not that it had to go through many different sort of changes?
Yeah, it did surprise me, and it didn't surprise me because I had a plan. It just sort of crept up on me. It's not that it was this isn't what I intended to do. But I suppose I started this website and this new life quite kind of naively, in a sense, thinking I'm just going to do that because I enjoy it. Now, what happened was that I then set up social media accounts like Twitter and Instagram and the likes that go along with it, and I sort of set them up in to be sort of related to where I was then. But then things changed because I started also from a work perspective doing some different projects and things like that. So I became a different person, and we're just talking about the last sort of 5 months in a sense. The website also changed because it started out as me thinking I'm just going to write on this. And then I moved to a situation where I thought, well, you know what? I've done my research, and I think in 2 years, within sort of 2 years, I can monetize this by making it, a decent resource for people as well.
But how do you find your clients, though? Because it's all right saying I'm going to write a blog, but number one, having the people trust you. So many people will read a blog and then just read it. So how did you actually monetize it that they started connecting with you?
Let's be clear. I'm not monetizing it at the moment. I'm in a phase where I'm building it up. My expectation is to monetize it in 2 years. I've been working in online industries and so on for quite some time, so I'm fairly aware of how things work. My intention is to monetize that in 2 years. It is not the sole thing that I focus on, because I'm working on a number of different businesses, and I'm sort of, if you like, it's not really a scattergun approach, but I'm working on a few different avenues, hoping that all these different interesting things, which I'm happy to go into, will provide me some income rather than one main sort of draining office job, if you like.
And these all tie into Pint Media, where you've got a series of other ventures. And are they fully realised? Because there's no getting away from it. Online businesses are great because you can connect across the world, and they are transportable if you want them to be. But in many ways, they're bloody hard to get going. They really are, until you've got some kind of profile, you've got some marketing strategy. So was it a trial and error process that got you to the point where you had these different ventures?
No, it was a sort of decision at the beginning of the year to start trying to do some things with some people I know, some things on my own, but some also with some very capable people that I know, and to start cooperating in a few online ventures, if you like. One of the main things that I've launched relatively recently is this nearshore outsourcing business, because I worked for a long time in Serbia and worked with developers on IT and business process outsourcing in Serbia. And so it's an area in which I have many kind of connections and a certain skill set and experience of. So I decided to set up a company which would hook up UK, European and US companies looking to outsource their IT with, let's say, what we call a nearshore outsourcing, which benefits from being probably a bit more reliable and a bit easier to communicate than some of the ones in Asia, for example. And I did that just based because I thought, well, what can I do? I sat down and said I need to find some income streams as well, and I don't need it to make money right now, but I need to start putting the plan in place to make this happen. And this is one of the things I thought of. And I'd started doing this for a customer that was looking for a customer support. Someone had got in touch with me, to ask for looking for a customer support department, because they knew that I had some experience of that kind of outsourcing. And it's sort of, that was the germ of the idea. And I thought, well, hang on, I'm going to just hook this guy up with the people he needs. And it's the kind of job where I can introduce them and I do a certain amount of management, but there isn't actually a lot of time involved. So that's sort of how that was born. And then there are other projects that I'm working on with some very sort of capable people and friends of mine, where we've just sort of sat down and said, hey, should we do this? and we've just sort of said, one of them, as an example, is an augmented reality mobile application, about which I know nothing. But, one of the guys had the idea to do this, and we sat down, well, how can we do it? And then we just sort of said, well, okay, let's do it. So
do you need people, Thomas, to jump in? Do you need people around you? Can people do
Absolutely.
This on their own, or do they need some kind of team?
Well, never say never. I can speak from my own personal experience, and that is to say that I benefit greatly from having positive people around me.
And how do you find these people? Because I've had a couple of people that I've worked with, and to be honest, they've turned out to be mental, and it's just been sort of very bad time. And I realised looking back on it, it was because I wasn't going out looking for them; they were coming to me as such. And so, how do you find the right people, especially in the online world? Because it's not like you can sit there having a few drinks with them down the pub, getting a real flavour of what they're about. More often than not, the people that are working are in Australia and you're in the United Kingdom, and there's a sort of bridge of trust that you've got to build up. Leap of faith, you could say. How have you managed to do that? Find the right people?
Yeah, it's not easy. I think I'm fortunate because there've been one or two people that I've worked with in the past that I've always sort of had a good relationship with, and I've been able to sort of say, hey, let's meet up and see what they're doing, and it's been the right moment for them also, and that's been a great advantage. So I think the kind of relationships you build up in any sort of walk of life, don't underestimate them, and don't think that everything has to start from scratch. I think it's really important to think about all the people you've met, and maybe there's someone out there that you can reach out to and just have a chat. And I think and something may come from it. One of the really important thing is to speak to people. It's just to communicate, because if you keep, and I know, people talk about it like networking and so on and so forth, and I suppose it is, but if you keep in touch and you speak to people, opportunities just sort of arrive. I mean, I'm not saying you can't just, let's say, reach out to the sort of, Richard Branson and say, hey, shall we do something together? Because realistically, that's not going to happen. But communicate with people, be interested in what other capable people in a field that interests you do. And talk to them, because you know what? They're probably quite happy to talk to you. Put yourself in their shoes for the moment. If someone contacts you and says, I'd like your opinion on this, or I really like this that you wrote, and so on and so forth, you'd be sort of flattered and interested. So I think it's fair to say that just sort of try communicating with people in a similar field.
But that's a big leap of faith as well, isn't it? Because people at the beginning will think, well, I've got nothing to offer these people. Why? They're going to be busy. They don't want to be bothered by me. But what you're saying is absolutely true. And as long as you go with value first, you're not asking anything. You're just looking to build up a relationship with these people. As we said at the beginning, Kathy was on the show back on 88. She's been great. She's been absolutely brilliant. And we still connect every now and again, and she puts guests forward for the show and stuff. I don't think either of us have asked for anything from the other person. It's just sort of naturally grown, and I sort of value her very, very much.
Yeah, I agree. I think she's an amazing person, really. I have a huge amount of respect for her, and not obviously, mountains being a passion of mine, that there's that whole aspect of it as she's climbed Everest and so on. But it's not just that. I mean, just beyond that, I agree. And I think many, many people are like that. There's a big sort of barrier in people's minds. And it's exactly the same in mine. I have to force myself to do these things. But it is worth doing. It is worth getting in touch with people. It is worth trying to communicate people. As you rightly say, don't just contact people and ask for something. Contact people with some sort of positive communication. Comment on something they've done. Know about them before as well. Don't just send a speculative email to someone. But if someone reaches out to me, someone sent me a message the other day, just simply some little thing asking for some information on some walk I'd done, and it's an absolute pleasure to reply to that. Why wouldn't it be? And I think you cannot overstate how important it is that if you identify some sort of field that you're interested in working in, then you need to be talking to people in that field.
No, I agree with you. I totally agree with you. And it's one of those things that I'm not brilliant at, to be honest. I'm very isolated in many ways, and I have to force myself to actually build these connections, because I like to meet people face to face, and that's the big bridge that I've had to cross in the online environment, being aware that actually the real value of the relationships is more often than not the people that you aren't meeting face to face. And
the thing, David. Sorry to interrupt you, David, but I think it's important. The thing about meeting people face to face is that when you do meet someone face to face, you're forced to talk. When you meet someone virtually online, or you want to, there's absolutely no reason to speak. So it is a huge barrier. One thing that I've done in the past to get over this fear, because I have it as much as anyone, and I'm sort of, I think, oh no, I'm bothering this person. Why would they want to speak to me? I'm nobody, blah, blah, blah. One of the things I've done, little exercise that I've done in the past in my life to get over this issue, but also issues of self-confidence, is occasionally say to myself, right, this week, I'm going to do something every day that makes me feel really uncomfortable. And that could be anything. That could be just sort of approaching a stranger and talking to someone, which, I mean, particularly for us English, it's an extraordinary thing to do. You just put your head down and walk by, but that's a very good exercise to do.
Now, before we sort of move on to this sort of the transitional part of your life where you actually made these big decisions, what was it about mountains? Because, we live in the United Kingdom and we haven't got a mountain love nor money, really. I've driven through the Alps, very, very impressive. But what was it about yourself that went, yeah, I really want to do something with mountains?
So I'm half Italian. My mother is Italian, and she's from the borders of a region called Val d'Aosta and another region called Piemonte in western Italy. And it's a really mountainous region. And so every year of my life, we went on holiday there. As kids, I think almost without fail, our summer holiday was staying with grandparents there. And I think it's a sort of brainwashing from that early stage, really, just being sort of surrounded. And they were my summer playground in a sense when I was a kid. They were the backdrop to it anyway. We weren't actually allowed to go off into the mountains as kids, but they were the kind of backdrop to it. And then when I was about 16, I started sort of getting more interested in the outdoors and in spending time in the mountains. And because as I sort of was thinking towards my 18th birthday when I was going to be free, and I started imagining myself going off climbing in the Alps. And so that's kind of how it developed. There was one person, actually, if I can call out one name, is a guy called Chris Townsend, who's a very, very well-known and highly respected writer in the outdoor industry, if you want to call it that. And he's one guy. I read an article that he wrote when I was 16 years old, and he'd written an article about a long walk he did in the Yukon in North America. And that was a catalyst because it just sort of ignited my imagination. And then, subsequently, I used to sort of go, summer holidays, walking holidays, climbing holidays, and it sort of just became a part of me. I've always absolutely loved being outdoors.
It is strange, though, Tom, isn't it? When you hear that you loved it as a kid and you love it now, and why we don't think to ourselves, I love this, I'm going to try to work in that environment somehow. Why you didn't go, right, okay, I love being outdoors, but we don't, do we? I love, and this might be a shock to you, I love broadcasting. I love being on the microphone. I love presenting to people. And for years, I was a sales manager and I was a customer service manager. Then I was a public speaker, which started leading me towards where I am now. And I think to myself, why the hell didn't I realise in the early days, and especially this goes out for parents, if you see your kids and they actually have got some kind of talent and passion to do something, really try to say to them, just create your own life. Try to do something that is great. It's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult. But if you fancy being... I've got a 12-year-old daughter who is just mad on dancing and acting and drama. And all her friends are saying, oh, you should take physics. You should take this. And we're saying, well, what's the point in doing that? You hate it. Just do what you like and then try to work it out afterwards. But... we don't, do we, Tom? So when you were sort of shopping, filling up shelves in supermarkets, that must have been so far away from your core essence, your core pleasure zone. But you still did it. You still did it because you were willing to push through to get to where you wanted to be.
That's right. And I couldn't put it better myself. I think I did even at that time think to myself, oh, I wonder if I could do something outdoors. And I did some mountain leadership training with the idea of maybe becoming, like a mountain leader and working in that sort of adventure tourism sort of sector. Yeah. But I didn't have enough money to finish that training. And also in the back of my mind, I think there was this massive doubt saying, well, that's not real, though, is it? You can't do that. Don't ask me why, because I absolutely loved it. And I can't rationalize it. But I suppose it may be now much more than it was then, but it probably wasn't really looked upon by generally as a sort of an avenue that one went down professionally, So yeah, I from a working perspective, I ignored it.
I've got a global hit show. I've got one of the biggest shows out there. It's doing great across the world, and I still, even though I've created it, all my effort has gone into putting it where it is. There's still a part of me that thinks, this isn't work. And it's been bloody hard work. It really has. But there's still a part of me now, because it's got to that point where 90% of it's enjoyable, I have a kind of guilt that I'm not working for a living. I'm enjoying myself. There's so many years of programming that we have to break through to get to where we want to be. It's no wonder that people sort of give up, really.
You're absolutely right. And there is, I think you're right when you say there is a sort of a sense of guilt as well, because so many people, when you talk about work, there's a kind of shrug of the shoulders, or it's a subject around which we like to complain, that I think it just sort of, it's kind of hard coded, if you like. And if you sort of break out and say, well, you know what, I'm just trying to do something that makes me happy, then people do sort of start looking at you strangely.
Yeah, it is certainly strange. But I'm going to play some words now of a guy who literally led his whole life to a point where happiness was part of it. It wasn't about the creation as such. It was about how he felt. Steve Jobs.
Of course, it was impossible to connect the dots looking forward when I was in college. But it was very, very clear looking backwards 10 years later. Again, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. Because believing that the dots will connect down the road will give you the confidence to follow your heart, even when it leads you off the well-worn path. And that will make all the difference.
Those words are kind of tattooed on your arm somehow, aren't they? If anybody is living by those words, it's you.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. And I think I think the key thing said there is it really is the fact that you can't join the dots from the beginning. It's when you look back, and never truer than now when I look back and finally sort of see a pattern. Whether that will sort of continue to play out, I don't know, but it's certainly very true.
And when you look back on your life, well, we always call it the big dot story, but when did it really come together for you? And yeah, you're still working towards it, but that personal belief that you can make it happen, make it so.
On and off, I've always had it, but I suppose it really happened sometime in the last 10 years when I started being a bit more successful financially. If I'm brutally honest, that was one of the kind of keys when I thought, actually I can actually do things and make money out of it. But it remains and will remain forever probably a sort of a hurdle, in as far as all the time I have to stop myself and remind myself and say, you can do this, because it doesn't matter what you're doing, what level you reach in life. You have doubts. So there's no watershed where it's suddenly, I've gained confidence and I know I can do anything I want. You have moments of clarity like that when you think, things are going well, and you suddenly think, oh wow, I can do anything I want. But 2 days later, there's the doubt sort of creeps in, and you have to give yourself another talking to. So there is no watershed moment.
But there is a kind of, maybe not a watershed, but there's a kind of water bucket somewhere, isn't there? Because, that there are moments that you can literally look back on. I remember that it was a manager that came into my office, and I alluded to her earlier. And when she said, no, you can't have the freedom that was given to me, I look back on it and think that was my big dot. That was the moment when I thought, no, I can't have this. I can't have somebody controlling my life. I'm only on this planet once. I've got to do something about it. But for years, I coasted. I really did coast, and I'd sit there with a pint going, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And I was very big in motivational speeches about what people should do with their life and let's go crazy and let's be bold. But I wasn't doing any of it myself. I was just coasting through life. So I think we do have these little dots that lead up to something remarkable. Then it's undeniable. You've got to do something about it.
Yeah, and I think in my case, it's a question of necessity, and that necessity can be financial, or most recently, the necessity of a mental, needing to get into a place where I was just happier and enjoying things more. So yeah, you're right. Though there are those points. I've had more than one, and they've sort of been different, but all sort of based on necessity. Where I just think, well, at this point. And I don't know how you measure that, but at this point, I have to do something.
Now, just before we bring it to the end with the Sermon on the Mic, when we're going to send you back in time, I'm just looking at your website, and there's a lovely picture of you, and it says, and your daughter, the armchair mountaineer and the reluctant mountaineer. Is your daughter being dragged around places where actually she'd rather just be on her tablet playing with her mates in the garden? Because it's like if you grew up in the 70s in the United Kingdom, you was always being taken to some stately home or castle by your mum and dad, because it was the thing to do. Yeah, you can't spend all your time on holiday playing in the pool. Is she really reluctant, or does she love it?
No, she is really reluctant. She's not the sort of person who wants to be playing on a tablet or anything. She's very happy playing, and she's happy sort of running around in the garden and so on and so forth. But the mere mention of the word mountain has her sort of yawning and telling me quite how boring I am. But this is one of the reasons that this month in June I'm doing this 30 days wild challenge, which is from some challenge set up from the wildlife trusts here in the UK to get outdoors every day and do something wild in June. And I'm sort of dragging her along because I've told her that both of us are blogging together, if you like. And this is my one reason why, one of the reasons I've done that, to drag her out. She is very much reluctant though, but I suppose each to their own.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we can't torture our children in some way, what's the point in having them, really, Thomas? Eh?
If you can't force them to do things they don't want.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that goes slightly against what we said before. But
yeah, I know, but I'm speaking from the heart. My son just lays on his Xbox all the time. And the other day, my daughter was dancing at a school fete. And we said, you've got to come. I don't want to come. It's boring. It's only an hour and a half. You've got to come. And the face on him, just because we've dragged him to some school fete. That's what you've got to do. Parental pressure. Well, this is the part of the show that we've been building up to that we call the Sermon on the Mic, when we're going to send you back in time to have a one-on-one with your younger self. And if you could go back in time and speak to the young Tom, what age would you choose and what advice would you give? Well, we're going to find out, because I'm going to play the theme, and when it fades you up, this is the Sermon on the Mic.
Here we go with the best bit of the show, the Sermon on the Mic, the Sermon on the Mic.
Make choices based on what you like and what you think you're good at. Recognize who you are and what you want. I don't think you can go into anything saying I'm going to make loads of money. I think you need to go into it thinking you're going to do something that you really genuinely want to do. Be yourself. Stop being a chameleon. Decide what you like and be that person. Don't be afraid to fail, but even more importantly, don't be afraid to succeed. Get involved in things. Be prepared to make mistakes and to learn from them. And if you're having trouble with anxiety and self-confidence, put yourself in the shoes of those that you interact with. What are they thinking? What are they feeling? We're all the same, and no one is going to judge you negatively for trying.
Great stuff. Tom, what's the number one best way that our audience can connect with you?
Number one best way probably is on Twitter, because I spend a bit of time on there. And you can find me, my Twitter handle is @ACMountaineer.
We will have all the links on the show notes. Tom, thank you so much for spending time with us today, joining up those dots. And please come back again when you have more dots to join up, because I do believe that by joining up the dots and connecting our pasts is the best way to build our futures. Tom, thank you so much.
Thanks very much, David. It's been a pleasure.
Yes, Tom Smallwood, who's in the mountaineering kind of metaphor. He's already climbed the first peak and then he's going again. He's transitioned himself to a point that financially he could make a bold decision to go for his dream, and now he's working towards that. And the key thing to everything, guys, was it wasn't all eggs in one basket time. It wasn't that I've got to create something that's going to make a squillion pound a second. It was, I'm going to create something that does a little bit of this and a little bit of that and then something else. And that's how it kind of works. Very rarely can somebody create something that just changes your life. But by keep on moving forward, opportunities will occur, relationships are built, and conversations are made that can take you in many different directions. And at the beginning, you can't see where it's going. You're just climbing up that first mountain, but you get to it and you look around and you think, oh, there's another mountain to climb, and you go again. And little by little, you pass all your competition because you are working towards something, and you end up either on the top mountain or your own personal mountain, and you're looking around and life is good. And Thomas will totally nail it. Absolutely convinced of it because he's doing things the right way. He's setting himself out on a time frame, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But there's pressure to achieve what he wants, and I think that's where it all comes together. When you can do something what you want on a daily basis, you put more effort into it, and you're willing to just push through the breaking points, the dark times. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Join Up Dots, one of my personal favourites. If you are interested in the lady that we've been talking to or talking about, Cathy O'Dowd, you can jump back onto episode 88 of Join Up Dots and listen to one of the early ones. But until next time, see you again. Cheers. Bye-bye.
David doesn't want you to become a faded version of the brilliant self you were once to become. So he's put together an amazing guide for you called the 8 Pieces of Advice That Every Successful Entrepreneur Practices, including the 2 that changed his life. Head over to joinupdots.com to download this amazing guide for free, and we'll see you tomorrow on Join Up Dots.